You're tuned to Evergreen Media Network. I am Cindy Schwartz, and this is the Patient Partner Show. Jeannie Roller is my co-host, and we are talking about an interesting subject today, Jeannie, and I think there's probably more to it than what we'll know right now, and how it does get reported or doesn't get reported. And what I'm talking about are medical devices that misfunction, aren't tested quite thoroughly, is what you're telling me. And what the adverse reactions are. Okay, what the adverse reactions, because there's got to be a lot of factoids about why this stuff is really even in the conversation, if you will.
Yeah. Well, the big issue, Cindy, is that there is late adverse event reporting from the medical device manufacturers to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA.
Okay.
Which, if they're late in reporting the malfunctions of a medical device, then others can be harmed in the interim.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big problem. The other issue is many doctors don't like to report adverse events with medical devices because they somehow feel that it could come back on them. So, there has to be something to get this taken care of, because medical devices aren't just the ones implanted in patients, but also things that are used like during surgery, like a blood pressure cuff. If it malfunctions, that could be a big problem. How the anesthesiologist administers and keeps you breathing, those machines, if one of those malfunctions, that's a huge issue. There are equipments like defibrillators that could kill you because the shock would be so great that it could kill you, or it could give you brain damage, or even, second, third degree burns, whatever.
Yeah.
One of the big medical devices are breast implants, because they can leak, they can just burst.
Right. Yeah. I've heard a lot about that too, and I don't know a specific brand. I'm not going to say it anyway, but yeah, I have heard a lot about stories about that. Another one, not to interrupt you, that comes to the forefront of my mind are those, and I'm not going to remember. It's got like a kind of a weird name to it. They're like the heating blankets that they put on you in the OR.
Oh yeah.
They've burnt patients and they've gone on fire, and so I can't think of what the name of them are, but I've read stories about that too. Not to throw any name out there really or whatever, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There these especially breast implants. I've seen some of them, and it's really scary. And I've read some of the women who've had them, who've had either a leakage or it just flat out burst, about all the health issues that they have. It's just totally frightening. And some of them will get as hard as a rock.
Wow.
It's just scary, but there are different reasons why a device might malfunction. It may have been made improperly.
Okay.
It could have not been tested long enough or properly. I don't know what the time is that they're supposed to go through the trial with those devices. But, sometimes these trials, and this goes on even different medicines, is that the trial is usually paid for by the company wanting the results.
Right.
So to me, in my opinion, is that's kind of a conflict there, because if I were a company and I spent a lot of money developing something, I don't want to see it fail.
Well, that would be a perfect scenario. Yeah, absolutely. But is that always the case? Do we know that's always the case? And again, like you say, what's the time frame? I would think, opinion-wise, that it wouldn't be the same length of time for each specific item, but I don't know that. I haven't done the research on it. Like, in other words, you do the same time trial as you would for, say, blood pressure cuff as you do for, say, that blanket that keeps you heated and keeps you warm in the OR. I think they'd be different, but I have no clue about any of that. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the FDA has certain classifications for recall, like right now you have to stop it, or let's just study it some more and see kind of thing, and in between. So if these events are being reported late to the FDA, if it is the recall that it needs to stop right now, that could put a lot of patients in jeopardy with that device. So, the fact that the events aren't being recorded promptly is very scary, and there needs to be some harsher penalties for not getting this information promptly. The other thing I remember was it the insulin pumps or the measuring device, but one of them had some serious repercussions. I think a person or two may have died from the use of one of those. And, it brings to mind insulin, people taking insulin, of course, that they have to have it to live. And if it's not giving the insulin to them, or if it's giving too much, then
or too little,
some serious problems, death even.
Yeah.
So, the manufacturers need to step it up and get this information to the FDA in a more timely manner, is my opinion.
And do we know who would be the person on the front line, if you will, that would initiate that reporting? Would it be a doctor? Would it be the admin of the facility? Do we know that? Because if you see something as a doctor, I don't want to put that on them, and they're only working with as good of equipment as they're given, kind of thing. And yes, anything can malfunction where you can't foresee it. That's absolutely true. But if it's known that it might have a defect, how do we know what's the time frame and the pipeline, if you will, to expedite that, to stop it? Don't use this device like across the board. Stop it.
Yeah, I'm not sure who actually, but the doctor, of course, is going to be in there, because the patient is going to be coming to them with whatever symptoms or whatever is going on from that device. So I would believe that would be a doctor thing there. Now, if it was a piece of equipment like being used in the OR, that might be the hospital administration.
So I guess it's easy.
I would imagine. I would imagine that there are certain protocols that they use for whatever device it is. But I don't know how the manufacturers are involved. It's all kind of a mystery thing.
Yeah. Well,
it needs to be more open.
More transparent.
But I know with the women with breast implants, at first, they didn't connect it with the implants, what was making them unhealthy.
Okay.
And with a lot of problems with the mesh, patients who have had mesh implanted, at first it's not connected directly with the mesh, but then later on they can pin it down to the mesh, and once they have it removed, most of the time symptoms will go away.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness if they can figure that out too as quick as they can, which is the ultimate answer. Like I said, things do happen, but if it's not being tested thoroughly, that isn't in the category things can happen. That's where you need to cover your bases and make sure it is tested right. The same as medications, the same, we've had how many discussions about that. The testing's there for a reason, and so is the checks and balances are there for a reason. So, it's just another thing, another hurdle that you have to jump through as a patient. The doctors do too, so the nurses, they do too. They're trusting the equipment and whatever, but there needs to be definitely a quicker way to report this stuff, and not being sensationalistic about it, but doing for the welfare and the good of what the whole medical community and the patient community. On that note, stay tuned to Evergreen Media Network.